What exactly are Ichikata and Cover, the companies that manage Nijisanji and Hololive respectively? Should we look at them as technology companies? Entertainment companies? Talent management agencies? This video seeks to answer that question by taking a look at the economics and finances behind virtual YouTube, and speculate about what the future holds for our favorite virtual anime streamers. On the surface, Ichikata and Cover look like pretty run-of-the-mill tech startups. They have nice, pretty-looking websites complete with over-the-top phrases about what their goals are. In Ichikata's case, they claim that they're designed to create a new entertainment economic zone, or whatever that means. These companies have both raised a decent amount of money from venture capital firms and corporations. As of this April, Ichikata has brought in about 3 billion yen in funding from various stakeholders. Just last month, it was announced that Cover was able to raise about 700,000 yen to fund their expansion into international markets like China, Indonesia, and the English-speaking world. That seems like a lot of money to dump into a company whose primary draw is making anime models for girls to stream video games on the internet. After all, there aren't venture capital firms lining up to give millions of dollars to offline TV or something. So what exactly is it that these investors see in the future of virtual YouTube? To answer that question, it's necessary to understand just what exactly the business model and primary source of revenue for these virtual YouTube companies are. Initially, you would probably assume it's from donations in the form of super chats. After all, these are the most visible, and virtual YouTubers go out of their way to acknowledge super chats to a degree that far surpasses most Western streamers. But the reality is that super chats and donations in general often make up a very small part of any streamer's revenue, not just for virtual YouTubers. For example, last year, the highest earning individual VTuber in terms of super chat revenue was Minato Aqua, who brought in about 40 million yen, or roughly the equivalent of $300,000 US. That sounds like a lot of money, but you then have to consider that YouTube takes about a 30% cut, and then Cover takes probably somewhere between another 30 to 50% cut. Aqua herself was probably only walking away with somewhere in the ballpark of $100,000. That's good money, but it's nothing astronomical. And this is the highest earning case. When you go past the top 20 or so VTubers, earnings fall pretty precipitously. In terms of what companies are then taking away from super chats, Nijisanji took in about 550 million yen, or the equivalent of $5 million US. But that again doesn't take into account the cut that they have to pay out to their VTubers and to YouTube. So in reality, Ichikata can probably expect something like $1.5 to $2 million in super chat money, and then Hololive can only expect around half of whatever Ichikata earned. Again, that's a fine sum of money, but is that really enough to justify $28 million in venture capital funding? So how else do these companies bring in money? Aside from direct donations, there are channel memberships, advertising money, and direct sponsorships. The problem here is that, as many poor VTubers have learned, these methods are very volatile and unreliable. VTubers like Kiryu Koko or Akai Hato have been demonetized by YouTube or just straight up prevented from joining the partner program. Koko wasn't even allowed to stream for a while. Ichikata had this whole tussle with Nintendo a while back about monetizing streams of Nintendo games. From a business perspective, it seems slightly insane to stake your business model on the whims of a capricious tech giant and the charity of sweaty weaves. I'd wager that there's a fairly finite pool of money that people are willing to donate to VTubers, and the more and more faces they introduce, the more and more likely it is they're going to end up cannibalizing their own market. So what then is the business model of virtual YouTube? What is their plan for future profitability? Well, I would argue that virtual YouTube is staked in a bet on the future of Japan's entertainment industry, one that is slightly less ambitious and one that is a fundamental reimagining of the future of celebrity culture. In the short term, both of these companies have two goals. One, to expand into international markets, and two, to establish a foothold as a media franchise. It's evident that expansion into global markets, especially China, is critical to their success. After all, that's what Hololive raised 700,000 yen to do. The reality is that given Japan's rapidly aging population and stagnant economy, relying on Japanese consumers is likely a losing proposition, especially when you compare that against the large populations of young people in places like China and Indonesia who are eager to consume anime and idol content. Propelled by the growth of an expanding middle class, the Chinese anime market is worth over $20 billion. The importance of international expansion is something that the Korean entertainment industry has known for decades. The concept of Hallyu, or the Korean wave, was coined by Chinese media in the late 1990s to explain why Chinese youth had this sudden obsession of Korean cultural products like music, clothing, cosmetics, and television. The modern Korean entertainment apparatus was largely manufactured by the Korean government as a way to increase the country's soft power across the globe. The success of Korean cultural exports has played a major role in transforming the global understanding of South Korea from a cultural backwater that's best known for fighting a civil war into a robust and innovative economy. Jung Bung Choi, an assistant professor of cinema studies at New York University, argues that Hallyu should be understood not as a cultural trend, but as a cultural formation. As he puts it, Hallyu as a phenomenon is largely, quote, helmed by a handful of entrepreneurs, mainstream media, state bureaucrats, and professional consultants. The expansion of talent into Chinese, Indonesian, and English-speaking markets is more or less an acknowledgement of this changing understanding by the Japanese entertainment industry, from one that is mostly concerned from appealing to domestic consumers to one that is increasingly focused to catering to an international audience. Many VTubers maintain a large presence on Bilibili for the express purpose of cultivating a Chinese audience, all the while these companies are increasingly trying to bring in more and more Chinese-speaking talent. Once virtual YouTubers become an established part of the media landscape, the goal of these companies would be to then move away from these forms of monetization associated with live streaming to those more typically associated with the traditional entertainment industry. This is something that Nijisanji is already starting to do. They're beginning to deprioritize super chats and ad revenue and are moving towards selling their own merchandise, like voice packs. Because Ichikara and Cover own the rights to their characters, they're free to profit from merchandise sales without giving any cut to YouTube or to even the VTubers themselves. By all accounts, VTubers are generally paid in some combination of a fixed salary and super chat money. The companies then generally pocket most of the money from merchandise sales. It's clear that Hololive is trying to maneuver their top stars in a way that's quite similar to what you would expect from a traditional idol group. Tokino Soda has signed with a major Japanese music label, and other popular personalities like Shirakami Fubuki have started their own radio shows. The big difference between Hololive and Nijisanji is that Hololive plays a lot more into this idea of marketing their VTubers as idols than Nijisanji does. While Nijisanji is beginning to prioritize goods like voice packs, Hololive is trying to maneuver their talent into the traditional idol space, which probably explains why Nijisanji's male talent is a lot better off than Holostars, which literally no one cares about. In the near future, we're likely to expect Hololive to have hologram concerts much like Hatsune Miku does. By creating merchandise or experiences that consumers buy directly from the company, it avoids the many complications associated with YouTube's platform and their monetization whims, and allows for a more consistent form of revenue into the future. Cover and Ichikara both benefit greatly from how much lower their costs are when compared to a traditional entertainment company. Developing a 2D character model is a fairly fixed one-time cost, and afterwards can be used basically forever. But in the long term, I think that virtual YouTube is a wager on the future of entertainment. A wager that one day we won't have any real celebrities, or at least virtual celebrities will be normalized to the point where no one really thinks twice about their existence. Japan has been experimenting with the idea of virtual idols since the 1990s, with the earliest being a relatively obscure figure named Kyoko Date. In 2011, AKB48 experimented with this idea by debuting a new member of their group that later ended up just being a CGI model of other AKB48 members. Hatsune Miku's large popularity is the greatest triumph for the idea of the virtual idol. This is where the technology side of the virtual YouTuber business comes in. The majority of their non-talent management related work is developing models for the girls to use and iterating on motion capture technology to improve the fidelity and quality of their virtual YouTubers. At the end of the day, what makes a real girl better than an anime one? I'm sure there's already a large contingent of people out there who would resoundingly tell you that the answer is a fat nothing. If we reach a point where a virtual avatar is able to capture the same fluidity of movement and nuance of emotion as a real human being, is there any real difference between such an avatar and a video of a real person? As one scholar put it, quote, "For an otaku audience eager to both consume and produce a technologicized, artificial, endearing, and seductive fantasy of femininity from fragments of digital information, an idol such as Hatsune Miku promises a relationship which is in at least some way superior to that offered by a flesh and blood performer." According to one study on why people choose to watch Twitch streams, the primary draw of live streaming, as opposed to forms of on-demand video like YouTube, is that live streaming allows people to feel a sense of community by participating in the cesspool that is Twitch chat. A similar phenomenon no doubt exists for virtual YouTubers, where people feel like they're having certain social needs fulfilled by interacting with these virtual YouTubers and their other fans. Virtual YouTubers stand at the confluence of two established products, the virtual idol and their real counterparts. The story of Japan and the global economy more broadly is the ever greater acceptance of technology in the virtual world. In the long term, I don't think it's unreasonable to think that we might reach a future in which the notion of the living body ceases to be an important part of the media landscape or even real life altogether. As the advancement in entertainment, social media, and gaming demonstrate, we are increasingly blurring the lines between the digital and real worlds. If the technology behind virtual YouTubers can be developed to the point in which it is readily available for mass market consumption, we could very much see a world in which we have a robust digital ecosystem that parallels the real world, not unlike those depicted in anime like Summer Wars or Psycho-Pass. Perhaps this is hyperbolic, but virtual YouTubers may genuinely have the ability to reinvent the media landscape and how we interact online. It will undoubtedly be interesting to see where these businesses and their virtual YouTuber talent go in the coming years.